Hello and welcome back to the Champion Draft Series. Off on a little bit of a break, but we didn't go anywhere. I'm your host as always, Pink Ghost, and back again we have Joeysticks to help us break down this exciting week. Welcome back, Joey.
I'm very glad to be back, Pink. I'm very excited. I know that there are some surprises this week, so I'm very excited to see what CDS brings.
Yeah, me as well. So let's just jump right into the action, starting with some of these interesting trades that we had this week.
Yeah, Pink, several rosters in the CIS have changed after the trade week. So let's dive right into these themes and strategies that they have been bringing this week, and starting with Elzon.
So Elzon, as you may remember, was the Piltover and Zon team leader, drafting a lot of Piltover champions, sort of having an embargo on the rest of the region. Definitely a powerful move, but also limiting her in region access. So looking at the trades that she made this week, we see her getting rid of some of her Piltover and Zon champions to give her access to more regions, using her free trade to trade her Vi for Renekton, who at the moment did not have another roster to belong to. Renekton kind of doing the same stuff as Vi, definitely wants to be challenging, but can push through with that overwhelm. Starts with a consistent attack point, costs less, and gives access to Shurima, so probably a very good trade for her and her roster. She also engaged in a couple of trade deals with Aikado, giving up her Teemo for Ophelia, so getting that Targon weapon swapping action added into her roster, and gave up her Maokai for Yasuo, giving her some Ionian access. I actually think that is a very important trade to highlight, because she doesn't lose Shadow Isles access, she still has Hecarim, and I think Hecarim likes all of the ephemeral harrowing stuff that she was already doing with Anivia in the first place. I think if it were me, I would only bring Maokai in her match versus Tempo, which has already happened. So I think that overall, these are some great improvements that Elzon has made to her roster. But now let's go to Absolution, see what he did.
Yeah, so Absol, you know the guy, he's straight to the point. So he just traded in action for Samira, grabbed the Samira right off the bat, the second to go, really grabbed that powerful champion that is coming on with this expansion, and that is gonna open up Noxus for him. And now he can play Samira Jhin if he wants to, right? Which is going to be very interesting in Eternal, with Decimates open to play. So very interesting to see what Absol is going to do with this Samira here, the powerful champion of this expansion, Pink.
Yeah, but that's not the only new champion that made its way into players' rosters. Capitao gave up his Scion in order to acquire the newly released set. I know that he's been pretty excited for a lot of the new champions that came out, and to see him add this set into his roster, give him more Ionian access outside of the Yi that he normally brings with Rise, so that he can bring maybe another Ionia deck if he wants to, and make sure that his denies don't get banned outright. I think that's a pretty solid strategy. He's not losing Noxus, he still has Rumble, so I think overall this is a pretty exciting trade to see for Capitao's Crew of the Burning Dawn, and man oh man, I can't wait to see what he does with this set.
Alright, going over to Aikado, he traded in his Aphelios for Teemo, then his Yasuo for Maokai, a trade with Elzon, and then as Elzon had freed up Vi, he grabbed her out of the free roster. So for Aikado, he just really wanted that PNZ, man. He just really wanted some of Elzon's PNZ champions. And he made some good trades for his champions that didn't do much for him, such as Aphelios and Yasuo. Those weren't really doing much for him. Poppy was also a champion that I don't believe I've seen him play. Maybe he just kept her for the early Elites days. Maybe he just wanted that option open. But now he's gone back to his roots, I guess. He's just a PNZ man through and through, Pink.
100%. He definitely expressed in our interviews how he was unhappy that Elzon got all those PNZ champions, and now he was able to snag a bunch of them for himself. So it's kind of scary what Aikado might be able to pull off. But now going into Tempo, who drafted Shyvana and Yuumi originally to give himself an access to a sort of Targon Dragons list, instead opted to trade his Shyvana for Garen, so sticking with that Demacia action, but then losing the Yuumi with Kale, which originally belonged to Puffball Panda. So losing his options for a more traditional Dragons list, but trading it in for the pressure that elites can put out that many other players have brought to the tournament so far. And now he has got the elite champion, Garen. So just another pressure deck to put into Tempo Mao's roster. And man, is it going to be scary in his hands.
Speaking of KO and trade Spink, Puffball Panda did that very profitable deal with Tempo, traded in her KO for Yuumi, and then sent Yuumi right on her way home again to trade in for Zilean and finally get the Echo Zilean list going. An elaborate trade by her part, but I like elaborate things. I think she was very almost a concerted strike, I guess, for Puffball Panda this week, and maybe we'll finally see the Echo Zilean deck work that she's been trying since week 1.
Yeah, maybe. That is all of the players that engaged in trades. We have 2 players, Spids and Mafferju, who did not engage in trades. Now, Joey, I seem to remember in your interview with Mafferju last week, her saying that she felt like all of her champions sort of had a place. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, she told me that all of her champions seem to have a place, especially in her heart, I guess. So she's really enjoys those champions. It didn't seem like she needed much. She said she was going to think about it, but she didn't seem like overly eager to make any trades. So this is spot on for her this week. She kept her promise. I guess she didn't see a need to make any of her trades, especially as she's undefeated, right?
Yeah, why fix what isn't broken, right? And then Spids here also not engaging in any trades. Probably pretty confident that her roster, there's not any trades that she could have possibly performed that would have improved it in any such way or make her any less targetable. So it's good to see her confidence into her roster and see how that performs into the later weeks. But anyways, that is all of the trades that occurred during this trade week. We've got a lot of new rosters in the series, some that look still pretty familiar, some that have changed rather drastically, and we're going to have to see how those changes affect player performance going forward. But right now, it's time to jump into one of my favorite segments in this series, Deck Dives. We have yet to feature a deck from Capitao Circuit in our Deck Dive segment, so why not now, as he has decided to integrate not only his newly acquired set into a deck that he brought this week, but also the champion that he has yet to bring in the series, Twisted Fate, finally gets a time to shine. We have Twisted Fate set, Bilgewater Ionia, and this is a cool looking list, Joey. What do you think about it?
I think it's very on par with his style. He told me that this is a style that he's been trying to make work since the Bilgewater release. So it's good to finally see him find a place for this strategy with a brand new champion. And this already, from the looks of it, when we see this list of cards, it already seems too powerful to be allowed, Pink.
Yeah, we've got a lot of draw, a lot of coin generation, and just the Ionian tools of negation. But this deck also kind of scares me a little bit, Joey, because we've got 3 copies of Attentive Accountant, 3 copies of Zap Sprayfin. This is kind of an elusive deck here, just able to go right underneath you.
For sure, it's an elusive deck, chipping in that damage in early rounds, and then you have Sign-In, Thousand Tail, which can bring even more buffs at late game. And we can't forget that the threat of Twisted Fate leveling up is real in this deck, and Sep brings a lot of Temple plays late game too with his Showstopper, so maybe we have the elusives for chipping damage, and a late game, maybe the damage that's left is gonna be by elusives, the elusives is gonna be dealt by elusives, but Set can also take down a lot of the enemy board with the Showstopper and make for very explosive turns with coins.
Yeah, I want to put a highlight on that weapon that's been rocking Bilgewater lately, Bar Knuckles. Also sort of makes a lot of these other non-elusive units potentially also elusive units if the opponent doesn't have a brash blocker, and then generating you more of those coins. This can turn a lot of our like small dinky units like Pocket Picker, Pit Professional, even Smooth Mixologist into like some serious hard to deal with threats.
Definitely, and those units are value units as well. So as you're chipping in damage with that Bar Knuckles, you're creating more coins and you're bringing into late game. Definitely seems like a consistent list all around. All turns have potential big plays to be done. So very interesting list from Circuit here.
Absolutely, but as a reminder to those of you at home, this is not the only spicy list that was brought to this series, so if you want to check out all the lists that were brought by our competitors this week, just take a look at the link below in the description and you will find all of them there.
I think moving on to the next story, we have the grudge match between Aikado and Absol, which was thoroughly hyped up on social media as both players kind of trash talked each other a bit, not really recognizing the other as competition. So it's a very exciting match to watch and see the results, but only one of them could come out on top. So Ghost, what do you think led to this week's results?
Well, Joey, let me tell you, these decks were looking stacked. Aikado brought 3 P&Z decks with him, which was not something he was able to do until this trade week occurred. Now bringing Karmavai, Teemo with Annie and Katarina, and then Seraphine with Bilgewater, bringing all 3 P&Z lists, something I'm thinking he's very comfortable with. But Absolution switching up too, bringing his newly acquired Samira with Shurima, then bringing Atrocity, which was just reverted, with Tristana for some big Shadow Isles, hit you in the face sort of plays, and then his masterpiece, Jin Kennen, his very own signature deck. So how did these games go down? Well, I'm going to spoil it for you, Joey. Aikado won 2-0. Now, Absolution had his Power Punch Samira deck banned and didn't get a chance to play Tristana with Atrocity because these P&Z piles just ran over Jin Kennen. Now, we'll go back to my interview that I had with Absolution last week. Absolution said one of the biggest weaknesses of Jin Kennen, his signature deck, was P&Z control. All these low-cost ping removals that are able to get rid of these cannons and get rid of these other smaller units, especially when they can get pumped up by barrels such as Aikado can do with BB, the Mischievous Mirai. So I'm rather surprised. I'm not so surprised that Absolution brought Jin Kennen, because of course, what could be a better swag move than him beating Aikado with Jin Kennen, the deck that Aikado said that he could never lose to, right? Like that is definitely something that if you're Absolution, you want to prove Aikado wrong. But I am surprised that he didn't like lead with his other deck or perhaps swap off when he told me himself that P&Z pinging control was like very, very strong into his deck. But of course, he wanted to prove us wrong, and maybe he will later in the series. But this game, it just did not turn out that way. So that's how the grudge match resolved.
The matchups are a bit polarizing. It's really strong in certain matchups, really weak into like aggro, doesn't do too well, or like a lot of cheap interaction, so that like P&Z style control, which happens to be what's really good right now.
Capital Circuit versus Mafraju, our two Brazilian competitors that had managed to dodge each other through this competition, but dodged they could no longer as they had to go head-to-head week 5 of this series. Mafraju, at this point, undefeated. No one able to best her. Capitao can't say the same, but he did have his new signature Twisted Fate set deck. It was going to be a serious match, and I know Joey was really excited for this, so I'm going to hand it over to her as we break down the very tense Game 2 in this match between Capitao and Mafroju.
Yeah, Pink, I was very excited to see this match. It was Nora Viego versus TF's newest TF set. And we had a slow start for both of these players. They were very clunky with their hands, and only Nora was played on turn 2 by Mafroju with a top deck, just to be absolutely removed by Risk Venture by Circuit. On turn 4, Mafroju had an aloof discarding set, which probably brought her a lot of value in this match. But at this point, Pink, Circuit was completely controlling the game. Even when Mafroju tried to control his hand, he struck right back, because right afterwards she tried to Soul Cleaver the aloof and hopefully discard 2 more cards in Circuit's hands, but he tagged out, sending the aloof back into her hand. This is now turn 6, Pink, and Signing is the card that comes down for Circuit, bringing a lot of buffs to his TF, who had Barnacle, by the way. But Mafroju already has the answer on hand. Viego Nora is a very controlly deck, and she vengeances that TF, who, by the way, it was very close to flipping, so it's incredible how this list can level up TF very quickly. On turn 7, we had 2 portals for Mafroju. Is probably the funniest play in this game. One of the portals brought Veteran Investigator, which brings another card into Circuit's already very clunky hand, and it was the second TF who is now burned. So we only have 1 TF down in the deck. But the game drags on. We have turn 10 bringing Set leveled on board for Circuit, and he uses Twin Disciplines as an answer to Mafroju's another vengeance to create the Showstopper. So that card that is going to be created by Set that can bring a lot of dominance on board for this attack token by Circuit. Now he has 3 Luffs on board and brings Mafroju to 4 health. That's how Showstopper can be an aggressive spell for the turn of attack. But it's now turn 11, Pink, and both players are on their ends. Mafroju tries to get Circuit to give up his elusive units, which we've already mentioned can be quite a threat, but he can only give up Zap, and he knows his win con is elusives now. He knows he has to work with those 2 elusive units with 1 Barnacle each, by the way. So the 2 elusives on board are lethal turn 12, and Mafroju is looking very desperate, so she tries to search in her brain a way to stay alive, and she finds it. She uses the Bendel City Deny to break one of the Barco Knuckles in her hand, a very unusual use for this card, and stays alive at 1 health. So Mafroju definitely didn't want to go down easy, as she was undefeated. So turn 13 comes along, and guess what? This is definitely Circuit's champion, because a 3rd TF comes up in top deck. Mafroju is at 1 health, and the red card is going to finally take down the undefeated Master Mafroju here at week 5 of CDS, Pink.
Nossa! Pau! Dali, velho! Nossa senhora!
Estava nas cartas.
Yeah, probably the most exciting match that we had this week, if not the entire series. Mafroju no longer undefeated. Capitao being able to take that title away from her with his new signature deck. I know that he must have been incredibly excited by this feat, and props to him. Can't wait to see what he does with these new brews for the rest of the series. Well, that about wraps up the Champion Draft Series recap for week 5. As always, here are the scores, the current scores represented on the screen. We have Puffball Panda climbing even higher now tying for first with Mafroju, since she was defeated, but Aikado climbing as well, and the rest of the players sort of fighting to make their way into that 4th place for our top 4. It's going to be a very close battle to make that top 4, as we can see here, and who knows, we could even see some of our top leaders over the next few weeks drop down below. So you'll have to wait till week 6 to see how the rest of these games unfold. Current schedule up on screen right now, so if you want to catch any of them live, or if not, you can always meet with us back on the week 6 recap. I believe I'll have Monte Cristo on that week, so stay excited for that. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up our show, Joey. It was great to have you on again. I was glad to have you for this Brazilian blood match that we had, and I hope that you enjoyed your time here.
Oh, absolutely, Pink. This was a battle for the ages. We haven't seen TF play that way, I guess, ever. So yeah, very exciting matches, and we can expect even more of these players as competition tightens, as competition gets harder. We are gonna have to see some newest brews to really make it to the top 4.
Yeah, and I can't wait, but I'm going to have to, as it is now time for us to say goodbye to the rest of our audience. Ciao, ciao.